Hi everyone, welcome to the final conversation in the first season of Hustle Fuel, a Founding Fuel series about female role models from the world of technology and entrepreneurship. Our guest today had checked all the right boxes, as it were, at the age of 23. She was an IIT trained engineer, an IIM MBA, and had a lucrative investment banking offer straight out of business school. However, she walked away from the safe option to start up on her own. Today, she is the CEO of one of India's fastest growing beauty brands with a multi-million dollar profitable business. While at business school, she also developed a passion for running and since then has challenged her limits in some of the world's toughest and largest marathons and running challenges. I'm excited to be in conversation today with Vineeta Singh, CEO of Sugar Cosmetics, and ask her about how she overcame her fears and turned them into wins, how sometimes an unconventional approach helped her scale more and faster than legacy brands, and how her hobbies outside work and being a mom have helped her build resilience and be a better entrepreneur. Without any further ado, I'm excited to get chatting with Vineeta. Hey, Vineeta.
Hi, Prajata. Very excited that you're doing this and to be a part of this podcast. I think I keep saying that entrepreneurs, more than investors or anything else, they need cheerleaders. So great to see people like you building ecosystem around entrepreneurship and of course focusing on women entrepreneurs because we're still under 10% of the ecosystem as far as funded companies go. So long way to go. And but yeah, it's very excited about this.
It's a pleasure to have you. Like I said in my introduction, at 23, you had checked all the conventional boxes, yet you set out to create this alternative life template that, in retrospect, has been as rewarding. How did you muster up the courage at such a young age to take that step?
Yeah. So, to be very honest, at 23, I probably, just because I excelled in school, I thought I was invincible. And the reason I started up was I thought that this would really end up with me before 30 having an IPO and like a fancy business which is super profitable and I'd be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. So that was the original plan, but of course as I would learn the hard way, entrepreneurship is a long and hard journey, and the reason I had that confidence at that age was that I really felt like I didn't have any strings attached, and I thought, that if I have to learn about entrepreneurship, I think the best way to learn is by being one. And I had a few co-founders who were willing to take that plunge with me. So I think that as well helped me garner some confidence. And I was always very clear that at some point in my life, I would build something, I would create a business. And like businesses which are like centered around women as consumers, that's a category I was very excited about. But as luck would have it, the original plan that I had, I wanted to start a women's lingerie brand right out of I'm Ahmedabad, but that would require like a bit of funding, and after like 5 rejections from venture capitalists about how a 23-year-old could not build a digital first lingerie brand in India, I decided that I will never ever fundraise, and we went to the other end of the spectrum and said, okay, we will only run a bootstrapped company, and which is what I ended up running for 5 years. And I think it was probably the hardest 5 years of my life. Definitely tasted what entrepreneurship is like, and it's a lot of hard work, a lot of failure, a lot of rejection. Experience what it's like to sell to large corporate where they see like a 24-year-old coming and pitching to them service, and they think that she's not going to be able to do a fab job. So all sorts of series of rejections, one after the other. And then, of course, in those 5 years, the business did not scale, and I ended up exiting that. And later started Fab Bag, which would then become Sugar, which we can talk about later. But I think, yeah, in hindsight, I'm very happy that I took the plunge, because it got me to doing something that I really, really love. And this, entrepreneurial journey and building and working with like really inspiring colleagues of mine, and every day doing something new. I think it's a lot of fun. But I definitely started for all the wrong reasons. I definitely started with a lot of incorrect assumptions about, just because I excelled at business school or at in engineering, I would make a great entrepreneur. I think these two probably had nothing to do with each other, and entrepreneurship was more about selling and some out of the box thinking, and about building a team, recruiting, and constantly motivating people, and all of that I'd never learned. So, but I'm glad that those first 5 years of like failing and struggling gave me a lot of practice. So I think, if I could put it this way, I've been an entrepreneur for probably like 14, 15 years, out of which like the first 10 was a lot of struggle. And in the last 4, 5 years, it just really took off. And when I look back, I could never think during those 10 years that it would someday take off like this. But I think that's how most of us end up on our long entrepreneurial journeys.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's just about having the confidence to take the plunge, right? Whatever that confidence comes from is different, but it's just about doing it. So, like you said, your journey's had some twists and turns, and in 2012, you set up Fab Bag, which was a monthly makeup and beauty subscription company for women. And then in 2015, that pivoted to Sugar, which is a brand making cosmetics for Indian skin tones. What motivated that pivot, and what did you learn?
Yeah. So this is something that I feel very strongly about. So the reason we started Fab Bag was that we were seeing that the way these younger women, millennials, Gen Z women in India were consuming everything from fashion to beauty was very different from the previous generations, because this was the first time women had independence. They had like financial freedom, and they were beginning to step out a lot more. So that means that they were wearing makeup on a regular basis. They were going to college, they were working, and that really shifted things in terms of like consumption was beginning to grow very fast. And there was still these traditional legacy brands that really thought that the correct way to build a brand is really get an expensive celebrity and then market on ATL. But we were seeing that these young women, they were very opinionated, they were very independent thinkers, and they were beginning to get inspired by other real women and not really celebrities. So they wanted to see what other real women were doing. And then, of course, they were spending more time on their smartphones, shopping online. So because they had access to debit cards, credit cards, and which meant that in the last 5 to 6 years, we've seen that the percentage of e-commerce shoppers being women was less than 10%, and that's now about 45%. So back in 2012, we sort of had I as a consumer thought that beauty as a category in India would explode, and what younger women want is very different from what older women want. And e-commerce is is where brands will eventually have like 20-30% of their business coming from. But right now these brands don't know how to sell on e-commerce, because beauty is still a touch and feel category. So sampling and at home trials, like it was working in the US, would work in India, and that would be the one way to solve the adoption issues that women had with e-commerce in India. And then, of course, so we launched Fab Bag, and we tried scaling. We got to about 16,000 monthly subscribers, and we had this database of 200,000 women very passionate about beauty, fashion. But we realized that, firstly, subscription as a business is much harder to scale in India. You have a problem of not being able to do recurring payments because of the RBI complications, and then, of course, when the Indians don't want to commit to anything over a long period of time. So, and as Fab Bag, we actually charged them the entire subscription tenure in advance. So that made it even harder for them to commit to something like a Fab Bag. And it was just a very complicated business, and it didn't scale beyond that. And there was a time when we actually, literally ran through our entire funding, and had like almost like the last few lakhs left in our bank account. And we we had many times thought about all the feedback that we were getting from these consumers, about what kind of products they wanted, and we'd many times gone to our brand partners and said that you're getting this wrong. You need to create products that are more long lasting, because these women are spending more times outside their home. They're going through polluted roads. They're going through public transport. So you need products which are a little more matte, more value for money. But these brands were so used to their consumers being everybody from the 20-year-old to the 45-year-old, the online consumer to the general trade consumer, that they weren't open to the idea of trying out products that could work for younger brands. So many times we thought of this idea of really doing our own brand. But every time that idea would come up in like a board meeting, the conversation would go towards starting your own brand. That requires like probably 50 crores, because you need to spend on brand building. And how much do you have in your account? Like maybe a few lakhs or maybe a crore. So we kept pushing the idea, saying that it's probably a great opportunity and a big idea, but it's not for us because we don't have the money to invest in building a brand. And then finally, when we were down to the last few lakhs, and we had like we were very clear that the subscription business is not scaling, we decided that, okay, what is there to lose? Let's try making a few products of our own. And we launched with like one matte eyeliner and one waterproof kajal. And the feedback on these two, because obviously there was like a lot of data that went into it of our 3 years of research with these women. They did phenomenally well. The feedback was great. Consumers loved it. And then we said, okay, this is exciting. Of course, we don't have any money, but this is very exciting. Can we, add like lipstick is the holy grail for these millennial consumers. Can we create a matte lipstick? And then we manufactured 4 shades. We worked so hard to figure out like the right shade for the deepest and warmest of skin tones, and tried it on hundreds of our consumers, and got the perfect red and the perfect nude for Indian skin tones. And then of course one berry and one fuchsia. These 4 lipstick, which we call the matte crayons, were ready with our manufacturer, who we had worked very hard with to create these, and we ran out of money. And so our manufacturer had these crayons ready for us in his factory in Germany, and he's telling us to take it, but our bank balance is like almost down to zero, and just enough to keep the salaries going. So obviously we do like dramatic cuts in terms of cutting down our office size, our warehouse size. We told the team, sorry, there'll be no increments, and all those cuts we did. And then but we knew that we we're onto something, so we finally went to our investor who had invested in Fabbag earlier, and he couldn't really write a check for sugar because he hadn't been able to prove the hypothesis that these guys are creating something great so far. So we but he said that, okay, I can't invest anymore, but I can give you a 1 crore loan. And but this is going to come from my personal carry money, which is very precious. So whatever you do, just make sure that you don't lose this last 1 crore. And that was the one time where we knew that, okay, we're onto something, and there's somebody who's believed in us so much that they've put in like something which means a lot to them at stake to make this work. And we just poured our heart into sugar from then on, and we just knew that we were going to make it work. And then, I think there was no looking back after that point. We managed to get those crayons. They became super hit products because they were extremely long lasting. They were very matte. They were colors that suited the warmest and deepest of skin tones, like mine, that often felt neglected by both international brands and Indian legacy brands. And then, of course, we used like social media to build awareness and education around how to use products. And of course, on e-commerce, the good thing is that, if you have a hit product, then the thousands of reviews will ensure that it goes viral. So our products started going viral, and they started getting noticed by bloggers. And then, of course, because of the thousands of reviews, people started picking them up. And that's how the brand grew. And of course, from then onwards, the journey has been very exciting. Now we're available in about 30,000 points of sale. On a monthly basis, we do about $6 million of sales, which, considering the fact that at one point we thought that we'll never even be able to raise $6 million, which is what is required, for a brand to really scale. And, that's why we were scared of it. And now it's like our, what we do in a month. So I think we've come a long way, but it's been a crazy journey. And I give credit completely to those 200,000 women who were at the heart of that pivot. who firstly told us where to go in terms of, which pain point and which problem to solve, and secondly showed us that, don't complicate things, create something which is very simple, easy to understand use case, solve a problem for a large number of women, and you can scale your business. And third, of course, our learning was that, you have to, if you want to build a large company, you have to be in a large market. And I think beauty overall is a very large market, but subscription was a much smaller market. So I think these are the 2-3 key learnings from our experience.
You definitely didn't lose that investor. You were you at Sugar, and that's something in India 20 years to reach. Um, what do you think you did differently? You've touched upon some of it, right? You're catering to a large market, but it's often overlooked and things like that. But what else do you think really worked in your favor that these legacy brands weren't doing?
Yeah. So I think one thing that really worked well is that we did an excellent job of bringing that education that happens in a store. Like India is still a very young beauty market where there's a lot of interest in the category, but women are still scared. They're still worried that people will say that their makeup's not good, or it's looking fake, or it's looking white. So I think we did a good job of bringing that entire education experimentation online. And so if you see our communities, like we have the fastest growing communities on YouTube and Instagram and our own app as well. There is we have like more than 400 million views every month on our content, primarily because of the fact that all we are trying to do in these communities is educate them in a fun way. And I think you can really do that by using authentic people to try your product. So women who like me, who have big pores and skin issues, and the girl next door rather than the celebrity, who when you see the color come on a person who's exactly like your skin tone, it feels a lot more relatable, and you're not as scared of buying that lipstick because you know that, okay, this person looks like me, so it's okay for me to experiment with this color. So I think one thing that we did well was bring that entire conversation and engagement that was happening in stores and in retail digitally. And I think that was the hard part. The initial days were very hard because there weren't enough users on an Instagram, YouTube, but now it's really taking off. But as a brand that really came in as digital first and created like a community where there's a lot of excitement and connect between the users of that community, and there's a lot of sharing around best practices of this worked and this hack, etc. So I think that was one thing. Second, I think, is product obsession. So I think product market fit in a market like ours is a very fluid concept. You can't say that, okay, I've arrived at a product market fit, now I'm set. You have to keep evolving with the consumer because she is growing, she's evolving, she's getting exposure to global trends. She wants to be in on global trends, but in a way that suits her Indian aesthetic. So I think, just evolving with the consumer. And what most legacy brands always thought was product is a commodity, and the brand and their marketing, the 100 crores they spend every year on marketing, is their moat. We turned it on its head and we said, if you have a hero product, social media and e-commerce will ensure that it gets discovered. They'll ensure that the product really reaches millions of consumers without spending on marketing. So we put in all that effort in the product instead of the marketing. And then we spend on in terms of marketing, we spend on earned and owned media, like on our community and content, but not on paid media. So we save that budget from marketing costs, which most brands spend. And that I think has really helped. And then of course the growth of D2C. So very luckily for us, e-commerce adoption is growing very fast. So today, beauty personal care online is 1 billion is expected to grow to about $4.5 billion in the next 4 to 5 years. So we're also, getting the opportunity to ride that wave of Indian consumerism being driven by e-commerce and social media. So also been lucky in terms of being at the right place at the right time, I would say.
Yeah. And I think influencer marketing has just like changed the face of beauty as a whole, right? Like, I can't think of the last time I've seen a celebrity do a makeup tutorial. It's always the girl next door teaching you how to contour, or just some micro influencer on the internet teaching you, how to look better because you can relate to that person. So I think that's also just a very fortunate trend that coincided with the growth of the brand. um,
Absolutely.
in some other ways as well, your approach is unconventional. So you never discount. When the pandemic was leading to this surge of B2C brands, you continued to build a strong retail presence, but you didn't burn too much capital doing that. What is the rationale behind those
Yeah,
decisions?
yeah, yeah. So I think the biggest rationale is that unlike a lot of investors and entrepreneurs, we're very clear that we're like a very long game. So we're not looking at a business where we're gonna create something and then exit, or we our dream is to list the company, run it for the next 20, 30 years, because we think that in India this is just the beginning of this wave where millennials and Gen Z will determine how what brands grow and what brands don't. And in the next 10 years, we're expecting that 75% of the women would be Gen Z and millennials. So the kind of influence and the buying power they have, it's substantial, and it's going to change the way business happens, which is why we're very long on the beauty category. And in that, we feel that firstly, for a brand, trust is important, and that means consistency is important. So we don't want the consumer to keep second guessing, saying that okay, I'm standing in store, but I'm checking the price online to see if I can get a discount, and then I go to the store and try out a product, but I'll buy it online. I think that kind of any kind of resistance that you create in a consumer's buying purchase takes away from the brand experience. We want consumers to think that okay, if you trust the brand, we will be consistent, and consistency also means pricing, and there won't be skewed pricing. What most brands do is that online they have like a 40% discount, but in stores they sell at MRP because they have the staff to take care of. But we control the channel parity, and we feel that in the long run, although in the short term you miss out on the big sales opportunities, but we feel that in the long run, and brand is a 10, 20, 30-year game. In that game, a brand that's consistent will win. So that's first. Second, we do feel that in India, retail is like entertainment. It's like a family shopping experience. So we're long on retail in the sense that we do feel that even 10 years later, 80% of the shopping will be happening offline. So we saw pandemic as an opportunity to grow shelf space where most brands, legacy brands, were exiting. So we got to grow with a much frugal budget than most brands previously had to grow. And I think that was a blessing in disguise. And now, if you see, like this month, retail is back, revenge shopping is back, and we feel vindicated for the bets that we took during the pandemic. But honestly, it was really hard because people were writing off retail left, right, and center.
Yeah, and you were also getting some of that physical presence, like you said, when other people were moving away from it. So that
Yeah.
also was a sound time to make those investments.
Yeah.
Switching gears a bit now, it's well known that you're an outstanding athlete. How has that made you a better entrepreneur?
Uh, okay, so I think a lot of ways. I won't say better, but it's made me the entrepreneur that I am. I think firstly, when you do ultra races, marathons and triathlons, there is this concept called DNF, which is like did not finish, which is if you don't finish, you don't get a medal and you get a DNF tag. It's as a runner, it's a very scary thing. So I've like done like for the last 15 years, I've always dreaded that. And I sort of apply that to business as well. So, when we were going through those really hard days at Fab back when we didn't know where this was going, there was always an option to shut shop, or to sort of return the remaining capital to our investors and say that this didn't work out, which is what a lot of businesses would do. But I think I had that very strong instinct of not giving up. And I think, in entrepreneurship, I feel that like if you're a smart person and you are at a problem with focus for like 10 to 15 years, you will create a world class business. Nothing can stop you from doing that. And I think that just happened for us. You ended up at the wrong place at the right time, the right place at the wrong time. All of those options got used up, and we finally were at the right place at the right time. So I think one is not giving up ever, no matter how much the pain, how hard it is. Second, also, I think is sort of pacing yourself. I do feel that a lot of entrepreneurs, like go into it thinking that, because they're in it for like a short, like 2 year, 3 year, they want to sell their company. They put in the kind of hours that require them to, they get burnt out. And they, decide to take like a lot of personal sacrifices, like they, decide to put their family on hold, and, travel on hold, health on hold. I think that's the other thing that I learned in a marathon, that it's very important to pace yourself. So, my first child was born in the year where we pivoted from fat back to sugar. And it was very hard at that time because, I sort of wanted to hide my pregnancy from my investors, because they would feel that, we invested in this company and she's got time to, have a baby, but not solve this sinking ship. But I was very clear that this is a long game. I'm going to pace myself. I'm not going to put life on hold. I'm going to do things that matter to me, and having a family matters to me. And I took that call at that time to go ahead and have a baby, and, be responsible for both the business and my family, because of the fact that I knew that, only like in the short term these things matter, but for the long journey this is just a small 6 month phase that will seem very small in comparison. So I think the second big learning for me has been pacing yourself, and being very clear what the end goal is, and not getting, just out of FOMO, fear of missing out, trying to really race and, like, sprint the first 100 200 meters and then running out of energy. I don't operate like that, and I think that's my learning from these ultra events.
Yeah, and so many things you've said, right? Like you almost see running sugar like the longest marathon you've run. Like it keeps
Absolutely.
coming up how
Absolutely.
you view it for the long haul, and that's
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Absolutely.
So you've said that being a mom has helped you develop a thicker skin. How so?
I think moms are by far like the most judged people in the world. And irrespective of, how we are raising our kids, irrespective of what decision we take on, like, say, breastfeeding versus not feeding, homemaker versus working mom, the hands-on mom versus, a chill mom, or whatever, right? All the terms that are there, irrespective, there will be, like, the 5 people who will comment saying that this is not the right way, and it's somehow always the mother's fault, and, it never comes on to the anybody else in the family. So I feel that, as a mother, you, in the first few months are always hard, but then you realize that, you're doing whatever you're doing for yourself, and you learn to do what makes you happy. And I think so, a lot of time people ask me, how do you balance, this and running and, your family? And I feel that, balance is a very societal concept. I feel that, I'm just doing what I love doing, and many times people think that, that's not good for my child, or that's not good for my work, or that may not be good for my health or whatever. But, I'm following my heart, which means that there's harmony. I'm doing all the things that I love. Some days one is more, some days there's a lot of running, but, there's an event, so there's training. Some days there's a big vacation with the family, there's less work. And then some days there are, like, fundraising, so there are, like, long nights in office. It doesn't matter, because, I'm like, these three are the most important priorities for me, and I'm going after all of them in a way that I, feel happy about what I've accomplished in the day, and not be accountable to somebody else's definition of what balance should be. So I think I've really, from all the, and I've seen other young moms struggle with this whole thing, and, that's the thing I say to them, that at the end of the day, your relationship with your child is all that matters. And, most of the times nobody else in the world can understand that. And I think, I really hope that 10 years later, at least, the judging is divided between the mother and the father, so that the women don't have to bear that load, among other things, the load of, being the judged caregiver. But yeah, I think it's still a long way to go.
Yeah. And one question that I ask all my guests, when we wrap up, is looking at your journey, just looking back at it, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
My 18-year-old self. I think I always prided myself in never failing. And I think till I turned 23, I didn't take any risks. I only took up challenges which I knew I could win at. And the only thing I would tell myself is fail more, fail a lot more, fail early and fail more, because I don't think confidence is, like pretending that you're invincible. I think confidence is being okay with failing and being okay with being laughed at. And I think the earlier, I mean, everybody has to go through that at some point, but the earlier you get done with that fear of failing, the earlier you can grow and then be unstoppable and be bold and free and do all the things that you are born to do.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thought. Well, thank you, Vineeta. This has been a great conversation, and I'm sure our viewers will enjoy it as much as I did.
Great, thank you. I really enjoyed speaking to you, Pratita.
Thanks.